Okay, good afternoon, ladies. All right. So good afternoon, ladies. You're welcome to the second masterclass for the Aspiring Entrepreneurs Program. And today we will be talking about nothing else but validating your product market fit. Our facilitator today is someone that I'm excited to have on board, as it has, some unusual insights to business and to life in general. So without much ado, let me introduce our speaker for today. So our speaker is Mr. Fisayo Okunsanya, and he's a lead consultant for 6234 Group. He's a strategy and technical advisory and capability development professional with background in management consulting. He is a graduate of the University of Lagos, Nigeria, and has over the years honed his skills and experience working with teams in the area of strategy and business planning, business performance management, human resources management, and project management. As a trainer, he's designed programs and facilitated strategy sessions for organizations across Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Rwanda, the Netherlands, and Norway. Fisayo has also led the team that designed and deployed the Health Management Program, a business program for business professionals promoted by Farm Access Foundation and the Enterprise Development Center of the Pan-African University, Lagos, Nigeria. He currently serves as a member of the faculty of the HMP. Over the years, Fisayo has served in executive management positions in different organizations, and until recently, he was the business development director of the Medical Credit Fund, an international impact fund geared towards improving the business position of health SMEs in Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Tanzania, Liberia, and Uganda. While at MCF, Fisayo led the team that structured and funded the acquisition and installation of an MRI and a CT scan at the 450-bed National Orthopedic Hospital in Gobi under a public-private partnership agreement. This installation of both machines changed the course of diagnosis at the hospital, leading to better overall outcomes. Fisayo was involved in providing technical assistance to the Delta State Contributory Health Commission via the Access to Finance scheme in Delta State, where 15 abandoned health facilities were overhauled, handed over to the private sector, and now providing care to over 100,000 enrollees under the Delta State Contributory Health Scheme. Fisayo is the author of the book, The Anatomy of Business, a practical guide to business planning in resource-restricted settings, and he is currently the lead consultant as the 6334 Group. He currently serves on the Human Capital Development Commission of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, NESG. And today we are pleased to have the honor and the privilege of having him share his wealth of knowledge and lead us in understanding how to validate our product market fit. Thank you so much, Fisayo, for honoring the invite, and the floor is yours. We can't hear you, you're on mute.
Thank you so much, Shay, for having me. I get very uncomfortable when my profile is read. So thank you for quickly finishing that.
There's a bit of an echo. We can't hear you clearly.
You can't hear me clearly? Can you hear me now? Hello?
Okay, it's a bit better.
It's a bit better? Okay. Okay, so thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me. I'm going to be talking about strategy. Now, I'm going to be talking about strategy in the context of your product, in the context of the market, and in the context of the customer. Is the echo still there? So I know I could...
Yes, a bit. Maybe we'll wait for you to use your earpiece.
Yes, I'm going to put my earpiece. Maybe it will go
okay.
down.
Okay. All right then.
I'll do that and then I'll share my screen.
So whilst he's getting his earpiece, ladies, if you joined using the panelist invites, if you can see yourself, can you please just log out and log in using the new link that Pipe sent, please? Thank you. You can go ahead, Fisayo.
Okay, can you hear me better now? I think.
Yes, it's better.
Yes, the echo should have ceased now. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. But before I do that, let me also just say that I'm happy, I'm very excited to be here. Someone says the book title again. The book is called The Anatomy of Business. And the reason I wrote The Anatomy of Business was because I had dabbled into healthcare and I had experienced a lot of people who didn't exactly know how to run businesses. And I had seen people make losses because they were not able to make minor adjustments to their business model. And so I want to share from the experience I've had over the years. Now, in the course of my business journey, let me just tell you a story. Since this is adult education, I'll just tell you a story. I started in consulting, and that gave me a very, very good foundation. It's so quiet. See, am I still audible? You can hear me. Hello? Okay, fine, you can hear me. So I started in consulting, and consulting gave me a very good foundation for business. I started to analyze companies and then, of course, went into banking. And because banks serve companies, that initial foundation was really very good. And after I did that for a bit, I went into I went to run a food business. I'm saying this because I'm going to allude to this a lot. And one of the reasons I went to do that was because people said to me, oh, you're just a consultant, you don't know what you're saying. So you write a lot of theories and you submit a lot of paper and you don't really know what you're saying. And I took that feedback and I went to run a food business for 3 years. Now, this was a food business that is there's no branch in Lagos. So we had 3 outlets, and the outlets were in Yenagoa, Ore, and Lokoja. And if you notice, Ore and Lokoja are transit routes, so that required a different set of strategies. I ran that for 3 years, and I'll tell you about my experience there. And then I left the food business and then I went back into consulting. So when I went back into consulting, I was training for banks, I was training for other businesses. And I did that for a bit. And when I was done with that, I went into development. And this was where my love for development and my journey for development started. I went into healthcare. And in development, I started to run a fund for the Dutch government, which was focused on giving loans to healthcare businesses. And I learned a lot doing that. And when that development stint sort of ended, I'm back in consulting now. And in the process of that, I wrote the book, The Anatomy of Business, sort of to break business down and share with you. So I'm here to share some of that with you. If you want the book, we can talk about how you can get it later. So I like to start with a quote every time, a small quote or some form of a story to set the background. Please stay with me. I encourage you to stay with me. We will start slow, and at some point we'll get into the groove of things. I like to read a lot. So the book I got this from was the book titled My Vision by the ruler of Dubai. And when I researched it, I found that it was even something that someone had said earlier. So can everyone see my screen? Can you see my screen? I'm sharing my screen now.
Yes, we
Fantastic.
can.
Now, can you see the annotations that I'm making on my screen? With my pen. What color is it? What color is it in?
Red.
Fantastic. So we have a whiteboard. So this is going to be a teaching, a real masterclass, right?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So I want everyone to read this to themselves. This is an interesting thing I like to start with, right? So I want you to read it to yourself. 1, 2, go. Every morning in Africa, a gazelle wakes up. It knows it must run faster than the lion or be killed. Every morning, a lion wakes up. It knows it must outrun the gazelle or starve. Right? So that's the picture. Forget that it's not a lion, but it's close enough. Now, it continues. Read this to yourself. 1, 2, go. It doesn't matter whether you consider yourself a lion or a gazelle. When the sun comes up, you better start running. Now, this statement was first made by Christopher McDougall, and it resonates heavily with me because it is the picture of business. It's the picture of what exactly happens in the business terrain. So it says every morning, a gazelle wakes up, it knows it must outrun every single predator, using the lion as a type of that predator, or die. And the lion wakes up, it knows it must outrun the slowest gazelle or starve. And then it says it doesn't matter whether you consider yourself a lion or a gazelle, when the sun comes up, you better start running. And this is the law of the jungle. This is the law of business, right? Now, something happened, and let me backtrack a bit to the slides before that. Let's imagine that the gazelles came into the 21st century and they decided that they could not continue to die in the jungle, right? And they placed a call to China. Just imagine with me. So the gazelles placed a call to China and they said, can you send us a 1,000 units of 160 motorcycles? And the Chinese sent, and they opened a letter of credit, and the Chinese sent the motorcycles to the jungle. And all of a sudden, the gazelles got their motorcycles. Now, they were or are not naturally endowed to survive in the jungle. However, they have innovated. They have found a way, and they have placed a call to China, right? And now the motorcycles have arrived, right? The motorcycles have arrived, and the lion doesn't know. Now, the game has changed in the jungle, but the lion doesn't know the game has changed. Now, if I ask you a question, when did the game change in the jungle? And I'm reading your comments, so please feel free to answer me. When exactly did the game change? Anybody can answer. Because this is the problem with business. This is where your strategy renders you alive or not. When exactly, at what point did the game change? Anybody?
Let me check the chat.
Thank you. So Lufunla is gotten, everybody's getting it, that's it. It was not at the point at which the motorcycles arrived. I love this class, everyone is shooting sharp. It was at the point at which the decision was taken that we cannot continue to die in the jungle. It was at the point at which the gazelles made the call. It was at the point at which, you know, that decision was taken, and they actually now tied it to action, and they made the call. So this is fantastic. So now their motorcycles land, and then you have this picture. Now, the lion got sloppy because it's used to the gazelle. So I imagine them telling the lion, won't you go and hunt? And he says, oh, don't worry, I know those gazelles, they'll always be there, right? So remind me, I'm going to talk about assumptions and strategy. He says that they'll always be there. I know the gazelles, they will be at the string till 12, and that's their routine, and that's the way it has been, and that's the way it is, and that's the way it's always going to be. Now, but the gazelle said, man, we can't keep dying here. So the lion, who used to wake up at 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. to go hunt, suddenly gets sloppy, not suddenly, over time, gets sloppy, and then starts to go later and later and later and later, and then at some point, you know, he's going at 11:45. Now, of course, at 11:45, he's in a rush. There's no stealth in his action. He's in a rush. He gets there, you know, and all he hears is just vroom, vroom, and he sees smoke, and that's it. Nothing to eat for the family that day, except he's going to share part of his own body. And the question is, I love what Eno said, when the decision was taken not to surrender to fate. That's beautiful. Now, the question is, how did the lion, right, become the king of the jungle in the first place? Is the lion the strongest? No. Is the lion the biggest? No. So who started to spread the rumor that the lion was king of the jungle? You know, probably a group of lions, I don't know. But how? How did that decision get taken? So the same way the gazelles have a right, and you have to understand this in strategy. Everybody has a right. And so we have a situation where the lion is taking, his cheese is gone, right? His cheese is gone, and he surrenders to technology. So I'm going to be talking, using this as a backdrop for strategy. Now, one of the things I'll use as my first example is telecoms. You know, I've been privileged to work and travel around the world. And one of the interactions I had was with Motorola on a global scale. Talking to the vice president of Motorola, I asked, he said to me one day, he said, you know, we should have come up with the iPhone. And in my mind, I thought to myself, are you drunk? iPhone, Motorola, I mean, that's so far away. And he said, no. If you remember the Motorola Razr, how many of you remember the Motorola Razr? Does anyone remember that device? The Motorola Razr, it was this, it had two types, right? It had a fold, it was flat, and you just loved it. It was beautiful, right? And it had a plain one, the one that didn't fold. If you didn't have a Razr back in the day, you wanted a Razr, you know? Yeah, thank you, Mary Rose. You remember it was fantastic. Now, what he said was, when Motorola first came out with that device and they sold that device, he said they sold so many units across sub-Saharan Africa and across the Middle East and EMEA, what they call EMEA. They sold so many units and that they ever sold. They sold more units than they have ever sold in their lives. They had never seen such sales. Motorola was at the top of the chain, right? Motorola was at the top of the chain. They saw sales, they saw revenues. And the next thing he said, and I want you to listen to this closely, the next thing he said changed my thinking about business. And at that point, I started to imagine what it would be like. The next thing he said was, Namasiko says it was the phone. Yes, it was the phone. Yeah, fantastic. The next thing he said was, and they went to sleep. And I started to think about this statement critically. What does it mean by they went to sleep? So he said they went to sleep. I said, they went to sleep. He said that they went to sleep, essentially in activity that is driven by faulty assumptions, right? So sleep in business now is inactivity that's driven by faulty assumptions. Now let me say something about assumptions. Assumptions everything you do is driven by assumptions, whether you do it actively or passively, driven by assumptions. Which means that if you wake up and you decide to do something about your life, you're making an assumption that you can do something about your life, right? If you wake up and decide to do nothing about your life, you're making an assumption that you cannot do anything about your life, that you are subject to the laws of nature and you are subject to fate. So everything is about assumptions. So Motorola, by not doing anything, by not innovating their designs, by not doing anything, was making assumptions. And he said they were making critical assumptions, right? The first assumption was, one, that they are at the top of the food chain, like the lion, and they will always be at the top of the food chain. That was the first assumption, right? That they are at the top of the food chain and they will always be at the top of the food chain. The second assumption was that their product was the best in the world and nobody else could replicate or do better. Now we're moving to your product, right? It was the best and nobody else could do better. The third assumption was that customers are loyal. Let me say that, and let me be the first to tell you that customers, there's no such thing as customer loyalty. It's a fallacy that people who sell things don't want to believe, right? Because if you shut down, if you think your customers are loyal, shut down your business today and see if they would still use that product. It's not true. Customers are loyal to the extent that you can serve them, right? If you shut down your business today, you'll find an alternative to your product. So customer loyalty is a fallacy. So so Namasiko says brand loyalty. Again, they are loyal to an ideal or to an idea, which means if you can't get a Gucci, you look for Hermes, you look for something. They are niche. So rather than brand loyalty, I like to talk about niche loyalty, right? Niche loyalty. Let me write that again. Niche. So they are loyal to luxury rather than loyal to a brand, right? Forever 21, those guys are shut down. If Gucci shuts down today, people will look for the next luxury brand. So it's loyal to a niche rather than a brand, right? Now, they are loyal to your brand as long as you keep serving them. And so that was a mistake Motorola made. And they are not the only ones that made that mistake, right? After Motorola left, Samsung came with the blue eye and the true eye, and it was amazing, right? And then Nokia came with the communicator. The communicator was awesome, right? And then BlackBerry came at some point, right? And then Nokia with its communicator said Nokia's brand identity was connecting people. Very, very interesting. Now, even though Nokia's brand identity was connecting people, they were not connecting anybody, right? You still needed a SIM card, you still needed to do, their phones were doing what other phones were doing. They were not connecting anybody. But BlackBerry Research in Motion came and started to actually connect people with communities, right? So the minute BlackBerry started to connect people with communities, immediately people left their Nokias and took their BlackBerries. But BlackBerry also later forgot that their name is Research in Motion. And so their research became static. And WhatsApp came and took the game. And this is the story of life, right? This is the story of products, the story of life. That if you slow down and if you are not in touch with your customer, you are likely going to lose that customer, no matter how good you think your product was. Now, I'm going to be sharing some thoughts with you that are unconventional. I just want to leave those thoughts with you, right? I want to leave those thoughts with you, and I want you to start to think about unconventional ways of doing your business. I'm going to be sharing things that may not be business school compliant, right? But please think about it. Now, I believe that entrepreneurs must be suppliers to the demand of their generation, which means that every generation has a demand. Every generation has peculiar demands, things that they need. Our generation actually thrives on the internet, right? And a few things that are tied to wealth, right? And one of the things that are tied to wealth in this generation is traffic. And let me say this about wealth. Please listen to this. As I speak, I will speak and say some things I really think you should write down and think about. Let me say this about wealth. The simple law of wealth is this. The more people you reach, so as you think about your product, think about this. The more people you reach who can trust you enough to pay you money, the more money you are allowed to make and keep. I'll say it again. The more people whose lives you touch, the more money you are allowed to make and keep. I'll say it again. The more people's lives you touch, the more money you are allowed to make and keep. Whether you touch it with a product, whether you touch it with a service, whatever it is you touch it with, whether it's tangible or intangible, is now the question. But the law eventually is that it's a numbers game, right? Which is why the internet does something wonderful in such that if you can drive traffic, then you can drive wealth. So every generation has a need. There's something people need. The question is, will there be supply? Entrepreneurs, whether male or female, must see themselves as suppliers to the demand of their generation. This is it. Those that supply the demand of their generation will eventually become custodians of the identity of that generation. I'll say it slowly. I'll break it down. If you decide to supply the demand of your generation, you will eventually become a signatory to the identity of that generation. What that means is this. If you have been sitting down saying, I will start this business, I will start this business, I will start this business, and you are not actually starting the business, you are at the risk of allowing another person become a custodian of your identity. Because the first law of succeeding in business is to show up. You need to show up, right? There's someone that's going to buy the product that you want. Stop second guessing yourself. Get up and show up. Start selling something, right? Those who show up will eventually sign for everybody, which means when they describe this generation, they will describe it in the light of those who actually started to meet a need, and not those who sat down on their chairs and commented, right? They will describe it in the light of those who came and met a need. They will not describe it in the light of those who sat down and said, you know, I could have done it better, but you know, it's just because I didn't have money. Let me explain that too. Now, economics 101, not like the way you are taught in school, but let me explain it this way. And I want to address the issue of capital. There are 4 factors of production. If you can remember it, then you follow me. The first one is land. Sorry. The first factor of production is land. The second one is labor. The third one is capital. And the fourth one is entrepreneurship. Whoever did economics, you remember this episode, entrepreneurship, right? Now, let me break this down very quickly. Land is everything in its raw form, right? Everything in its raw form, that's land. Everybody has land. In fact, if you look at land, land is a type of talent, right? It's in its raw form. So everything on the land, everything under the land, water, everything in its raw form. So it's a talent that you can sell. Labor is effort, the sum total of effort. Everybody can bring effort. That's labor. Everybody can bring effort. Now the third one is capital. This is the biggest mistake and the biggest lie that is sold to entrepreneurs, that capital is money. It's a lie. Money is an expression of capital. Capital is not money. Money is just one expression of capital. So you hear people say, if only I had capital, I would have started this business. That statement is true in a sense, but not in the sense that they think about it. Capital is not money. Money is one expression of capital. Sometimes I have seen this happen when you have capital in relationships, right? People have relational capital. I've seen people sit on boards of companies that they didn't bring a dime to because they had the right relationships or they had the right reputation. So money is one form of capital. So money must never be something that stops you from starting a business. Never. even if it is capital intensive or money intensive, you just don't have the right relationships to drive it. Some people have connected people and gotten into oil and gas companies in their boards and ownership, right? So money is one form. In fact, capital is from the Latin word capitalis. I'm going to write this down. It's from the Latin word capitalis, and it means brain or sense. Brain or sense, because in essence, capital is the sum total of value you have created from the day you were born up till now. That's the definition of capital. Capital is the sum total of value that you have created from the day you were born until now. And that capital resides inside you. So if you have managed relationships properly, and people have said, oh, you know, Shay, whatever you are doing in future, I want to be, I've seen that happen also. Whatever you are doing in future, I want to be involved. I'm going to invest in it. That happens a lot. You know why? Because people don't invest in ideas. People invest in people. People do not invest in ideas. People invest in people. And so if you handle your relationships well, you are likely to raise capital easily. If you are 20, 30, and you don't have capital, what it means, and you can juxtapose it this way. Because capitalis means brain or sense, every time you say, if only I had capital, I would have started this business, what you are actually saying is, if only I had sense, I would have started this business. That's what you're actually saying. That's why I said the statement is true in a sense, but not in the sense that people say it. You are actually saying, even if only I had relationships, or if only I had the good sense to build relationships, or if only I had the good sense to build my integrity, if only I had the good sense to build my skill, if only I had the good sense to do this and this over the last few years, I would have started this business. So, if you are not able to supply the demand of a generation right now, it's not because you don't have money, it's because you don't have sense. And this is it. You can start at any scale. You don't have to start at the massive scale that you're thinking about, right? Build your integrity. Sometimes you find people in the market who will say, you know, I want to do this business, but until this man is involved, I'm not going to do it. That's integrity. And then they put you in the mix, and before you know it, you're there, right? Now, so we've established that entrepreneurs must be suppliers of the demand of their generation, right? Now, in order to supply the demand of your generation, and this is where people ask me a lot of time, what business should I invest in? I say, I will never tell you. I don't even know myself. If I tell you, I stifle your creativity, because the businesses and the industries that will thrive in the next 10 years don't exist now. Think about it. Think about the last 10 years. Think about the last 20 years, event planning. If you told your parents you wanted to be an event planner, by the time they finish slapping you, engineer would have come out of your mouth, or doctor. So the businesses that will thrive in the next 10 years probably don't exist now, or some of them don't exist now. Nigeria will go into being blessed, solid minerals. Some people will be logisticians. Some people will have a lot of things. You don't know. The only way to know how to continue to innovate for your customers or develop new products for your market is to develop empathy. Listen to this. I want to say this. Empathy is the world's greatest business model. Write it down. Empathy is the world's greatest business model. Your journey as an entrepreneur, right, will only go as far as the condition of your heart towards your market. So compassion and empathy are the building blocks for great business ideas, for great products, for great innovation. Build relationships, deep analytical skills, putting yourself in people's shoes, embracing differences, finding ways to make the lives of people easier. What is business? What is innovation? Right? It is finding ways to make the life of people better. That's business, right? Once you can take that, then you can now cascade everything from there. But they don't teach you this in business school, but that's the first thing. And as a strategist, people ask me, how are you able to come up with solutions for any business? I say my heart is in the right place. And once I can put myself in people's shoes and look at their difficulties and see where the gaps and take out those gaps, then solutions come out, products come out. So first of all, you need to know how to understand the market, and I will talk about that. Once you know how to understand the market, then you can plug yourself into now knowing how to care for the market. Once you care for the market, then you can find solutions for that market. You can build products that fit that market. Every time I find people trying to build products that fit themselves, not the market. Every time I find people trying to build products for themselves, right? So you find yourself telling yourself, this is what I want to sell, this is what I want to do. Every time someone tells me this is what I want to do, I ask you, I say, is that what the market wants? Every time someone says, this is what I want to do, I ask, is this what the market wants? Right? Now, if this is what the market wants, if you know what the market wants, then you can build a solution, right? So I'm going to move ahead. Now, I thank God that there are people from all over Africa, because there's something I call African perspectives that I need to share. And I've decided to share this every time I come in contact with entrepreneurs. Why? Because one of the major problems of Africa is that we are selfish. I'm going to say it again. Selfishness is the biggest problem in Africa, in politics, in policy, and in business. And so there's something they did in MIT a few years ago, I think a few decades ago, actually. They called it human perspectives. Now, the idea behind human perspectives is to sort of arrange, now you can see this chart on your page, is to put people in two continuums. One is space and one is time, and to see how people think and how people manage their thinking, right? So you see space on the left side, right? And then you see time on the right, on the bottom axis. Now on space, we have your family, your country, your continent, the world. In time, you have today, next month, next year, to generations unborn, right? Now, these dots represent people in their millions, right? Or hundreds of thousands or millions, Africans. And most Africans are thinking about their family today. Can you see what most Africans are thinking about their family today? Now, as long as you stay in a space where all you are thinking about is your family, what your family will eat today, you can never innovate for larger markets. Never. Now, we found out from research that if you give an African a bit more money, he starts thinking about his country next month, next year. And these are the even very enlightened Africans. But most Africans will think about their family first next month, their family next year. If you give him more money, which means he's not hungry, he doesn't have to worry about what to eat, he starts to think about his family in his lifetime. Give him a little more money, he starts to think about his family, children unborn. Give him a little more money, he starts to think about his family, generations unborn. This is why African leaders are legendary for stealing money and hiding money in Swiss bank accounts for their children's children. How many people have seen that happen? So they say, oh, $4 billion, $4 billion, $17 billion. And you look at the guy's country, and you're like, do you know what $4 billion can do for your community? Do you know you can even use case studies and just use $4 billion and build one small El Dorado in your country and show people what is possible? But because our perspectives are only for family unborn generation. The richest Africans today on the Forbes list are those that are here. And go down to those that are here. They are thinking about the world in the life, in their children's lifetime. Now, if you want to build global businesses, you need to start cultivating a habit of thinking about the future and thinking in a larger scale. The internet has broken that time and space barrier. The internet now makes it possible for you to sell anywhere. So expand your thinking, expand your scope of thinking, expand your aptitude. Because if you don't know the customer base that exists outside of your country or your immediate community, you can never develop products that are fit for those markets. You would only develop products that are fit for local markets. So for instance, when I was writing my book, excuse me, one of the things I kept bearing in mind was that given the fact that this will be there will be ebook versions of this, you have to write it in a way that it can be read all over the world, right? So I get very excited when people call me from America, or when people call me from, also I saw your book on Amazon and I bought it. I get very excited because that was the goal, right? You have to open your mind. You have to open your mind to start to think about an expanded market, right? So the next question I'll ask you, and I want you to answer as many as you can in the chat, is we're talking about product to market fit. Where do you consider your market to be? Right? So where do you consider? Because that's a major thing. Where is this? What is the scale of your business? Right? What is the scale of your business right now? Where's your business operation? Where does your business operate? Someone says, I'm targeting a global market. I like that. But it's okay. If you're not targeting a global market, let's know. It's okay. But I want to know. I want you to type your answers. Where someone says my state and my environment, someone says Africa, someone says global, Lee says global, Grace says currently operating in Nigeria, Quickly says worldwide, Messi says local and global, the globe, my city for now. I love these answers because you are honest. It means that in your regular thinking and your perspective, you are not thinking about Africa if you are thinking about your city for now. That's the truth. But can I say something? As a rule, in this 21st century, every business is operating on a global scale. Okay, let me rephrase that. Every business is not operating on a global scale, but every business is operating in a global market. I think that's better. Every business is operating in a global market. Let me give you an example. In Nigeria, there's something we used to, and I know Sheyi remembers this. She might pretend, but she remembers this. There's something we used to call canopies. Now, not the cute ones that we have. If you remember, canopies. We used to say canopy. Typically, you get a welder to put together these metallic things and then tarpaulin to cover the canopies. And they used to use it for burials, every time. So if a man had 4 children, you see each one have their own canopies. You can be driving on the road in Lagos Island and you just see a canopy block the road, right? And yes, for parties, thank you, Dr. Jasmine, for parties. When last did you see one? Think about it. When last did you see one? Now, there's a local welder that fabricates those things. The local welder fabricates it. How rampant has it been? You know what has happened? The tents have come. The marquee tents have come. Competition has come from where they did not expect. Even the ones we see this are the final ones that come down and cover to the ground. The marquee tents have knocked them out. Why? Because somebody sat down in China, far away, and said, this Arabian style tent What if we bring it and we mass produce it? And it's nothing personal, it's business. And erect the canopy business in Ijebu, that they like parties. Erect the canopy business in Nigeria, right? So you have to know, first of all, in talking about product to market fit, that you are serving a global market. Somebody can sit down in a country far away and wreck your business locally by coming up with a solution, right? So think about that. So one day, I started to get a call from my generator man. In Nigeria, we have power issues, so we all have generator men, right? So I started to get a call from him, and he was calling me regularly. And I asked him, I said, Oga, what's happening now? He said, Oga, Oga, there's nothing, which means that, look, the ground is dry, Oga. Anything you can do for the boys. So I said, Oga, well, I'm not seeing in a long time. Now, I recently moved to an estate where there's 24 hours power. The guy's business, now, he will tell you he's doing a local business, right? His business is dead. One customer gone. And you know what? Many more estates are going on the 24-hour bandwagon because people are realizing that they might as well buy these massive generators and pull funds together and power their small estates. So the small guy that fixes those Chinese generators is in trouble. And this is how markets go. The market is changing, but he's not changing. Like the lion, he's not changing, right? So how do I get products that fit my market? I need to change like the market changes. I need to start thinking about the market. Now, I'll show you this model. This is the model we use for strategy. And it's the model we use for generally to guide our thinking. Now, it starts with this thought that there are 3 pillars that support everything you do in business. Please pay attention to this because this will be the fulcrum of everything I'll say going forward. There are 3 pillars that support everything you do in business, right? The first pillar is the operating environment. The second pillar is your internal capacity. And except you run a charity, like Shay, the third pillar is your financial targets, right? But even if you run a charity, there are some other social targets, right? You don't just do things, right? So the first pillar is your operating environment. The second pillar is your internal capacity. And the third pillar is your financial target. Now, the operating environment has the global economy. And this is why I started by saying you operate in the global market, because the global economy affects it. Oil price affects it, right? The price of electricity affects it. Whether there's a subsidy or not affects you. The foreign exchange rate affects you, right? Right? Then the government policy, physical environment, your customers, your competitors, I'll talk about that. Your internal capacity is the information you bring to the table, your skills, your processes, your people, your structure, your technology. And then, of course, your financial targets are revenue, cost, and your profit. So these are very, very key, right? These are the 3 pillars that support your business decision making. Now, if you were to define your strategy, your product, again, is inside your internal capacity. Your market is in the operating environment. Can you see where they are? Your product is in your internal capacity. Your market is in the operating environment. Now, if I was to define strategy, I would say strategy means given the external environment. And by given, I mean G-I-V-E-N. Given the external environment, what do I need to do to meet my targets? Given the external environment, what do I need to do to meet my financial targets? Now, it would say, given the market, what product do I need to sell to meet my financial targets? Or given the market, how do I need to package my product to meet my targets? Now, who can tell me, and you can put your answers in the chat, why do I say the external environment is, there's one word that defines it that I'm looking for. Why do I say the external environment is given? Anybody? Why do I say it's given? There's a word I'm looking for. And that word, if you understand it, then it might start to guide you as to how to move forward. Right? I like Rudo, I like your comment, says it is the market, like it is what it is, right? Because it can change anytime. It's static, not really. The business, okay? So the major reason I say the external environment is given is because you have no control over it. I'm sure you guys thought about it, but you just didn't put it in the words that I wanted. You have no control over it. You have no control over who comes in. You have no control over who plays in it. You have no control over it. So you talk about a product to market fit, right? But you are operating in a market that you have no control over. Think about this. Now, your internal capacity is your product, right? Your operating environment is your market. You have no control over this. You have control over your product. Then you can do whatever you want with your product. So you are bringing in two variables. One you have no control over. Two, the other you have control over. And that's why it becomes so tricky, right? So given the way the market is stacked, given the fuel price right now, what opportunities exist? That becomes the product. Given the oil price, given the foreign exchange, given the fact that people cannot transfer money easily, given what services can I, because their demands still exist. Remember, every generation has a demand. Whether the market allows them or not, the demands exist. If you connect with people, you will find their demands. If you understand the market, you will know how to navigate the market to still meet their demands. Your ability to meet the demands of people, regardless of market conditions, will determine whether you are successful in business or not. Your ability to meet the demands of people, whether will determine whether you are successful in business or not, right? All right. So if you look at this model, then we'll move on to assumptions. I already spoke about this, but I'll just go over it again. In the word assumptions in the English language means I'm not sure, right? It means I'm not sure. But in strategy, the word assumptions means this is the pillar on which I base all my decision making. So in order to build a product for the market, you need to know what the market is saying. Whatever you determine the market is saying is your assumption about the future. Now, we all in business are taking a position of the future. Whatever business you are in, you are taking a position on the future. You are making an assumption about the future. You are saying X, Y, Z will exist in the future, and so there's a business opportunity for me to act. Now, except you are a witch or you have a crystal ball, nobody really knows the future. That's where business becomes tricky. How do you know that when you order this product at 4.80 naira to $1, and you want to sell at 5.20 and make a 40 naira spread? How do you know that the minute your product lands, CBN will now move it to 5.50 to $1? So that after you sell, you don't have money to restock. Why? Because you've lost 30 naira. How do you know that after you now buy, that they will not even devalue, although that never happens in Nigeria? Let's just dream, shall we? That they won't devalue the currency to 430 naira, so that other people will have it cheaper, and you bought it at 480 more expensive, and then you're now holding dead stock that you can't sell. How do you know? Now, because you don't know all that, you need to understand the operating environment and watch it. The reason I'm stressing this is that anytime we start talking about economics, people get bored and they shut down. And I said to myself, entrepreneurs cannot shut down in economics. You need to become an economist. You need to become an economist. You need to understand your economist. You need to understand everything that's operating in the market, right? Okay. So that's about assumptions already. Okay, so we move forward a bit. So I said, now, if you look at the external environment, right? Essentially what we're trying to do is to take advantage of the environment and then minimize the threats. So there are threats in the market. For instance, some of you go take loans, right? If you are going to take a loan for your business and you're operating in an unstable market, what currency should you take the loan in, right? What kind of loan should you take? Some of you go, you're doing business like you're supplying companies. You're supplying a company that will pay you in 45 days, right? How do you fund that transaction? You're selling on credit. There's the risk that your money will never come back. Even if it comes back, because of the time value of money, there's the risk that you have lost money. How do you factor that into your pricing? How do you build products that people can look at and take money out of their pockets and pay? You're baking cakes, for instance. Let's take something as simple as cakes. How do you build systems around what you're doing so that people will not pay you in pittance? These are the questions that you need to answer in business. Now, I put this slide here because it's quite interesting to say that these are the things in the external environment that affect your business: foreign exchange, power, and well. The Nigerian government has been taking these subsidies out gradually for the past few years. I don't know about other countries, and they will continue to take in these subsidies. How does it affect your pricing? I think this year alone we have had two hikes in electricity prices and fuel, right? I'm tired. I don't even know what fuel pump price anymore because my heart, I have to protect my heart, right? So I don't even know what it is, but it's affecting your business, right? It's affecting your product. It's affecting your pricing. So how do you know, right? And then if you look at your industries evolve over time, structurally and in terms of size. Your industry life cycle is something you need to understand. So every industry goes through their life cycle. Everybody might have done well in that industry, but they might have gotten to a point of maturity, right, where you don't go into it at that point. How do you know, if you don't understand the industries, that this is the point where the industry has developed, right, is growing, it has matured, and it's about to decline, right? So sometimes your real estate market in certain places, some of you are realtors, right? Your real estate market is not the time, it's not the time to go in, it's the time to stop and think and wait, right? I mean, I've run businesses for multinationals, and when they have been pushing me, Fisayo, you need to be growing the portfolio, I'm saying, look, I understand the market. Like last year in the COVID era, I said it's not time to grow, it's time to stop and just wait and watch. Why? Because anytime there's uncertainty in the market, there's a problem. It's time to wait and watch. And we waited and watched, and we still made profits, right? Because we're not bullish, or we were, bullish means to be aggressive. There are times not to be aggressive, there are times to be aggressive. So that's the industry life cycle. You see development, introduction, growth, maturity, and then at some point every industry gets to decline. And I find out that many entrepreneurs don't spend enough time understanding the market. Inside of that market is the customer. And I want to talk a bit about the customer. Yes, your customer. Now, again, I've taken out the academic part, so I'm going to ask you this. Every business has a customer and a consumer, and more often than not, they are not the same person. I'm going to say that again. Every business has a customer and a consumer, but more often than not, they are not the same person, right? So it means that sometimes your customer is not your consumer. So let's define it. Your consumer is the end user of your product, the one who you design the product for. However, your customer is the one that controls the buying decision. So if your product development is focused, or your advertising or your business development is focused only on your consumer will never get the product because you neglected the customer. For instance, you don't sell baby food to babies, do you? So if you say, oh, all we're going to do is ensure that babies like this food, okay, so this baby that's tasted it, that will like it. The baby will never get to taste it. You know, you will not consider the mother, you have not considered the father. So you need to know that your consumer is the end user of your product. Your customer is the one that has the buying decision. Customer, you know, so I remember one day, I walked into Louis Vuitton in Los Angeles with my wife, and I saw this play out. She went into the shop, she was looking at a bag. I stood outside the shop just to respect myself. But at some point I felt, okay, go inside. I went inside. And immediately the store guy, the seller, the guy at the store, immediately saw me coming. He left her and came to me and started to sell to me. I said, Oga, this is the person that wants to buy a bag. The guy knew what he was saying. He knew that this is the consumer, this is the maga, this is the customer. And you have to, everything you do, focus on your customer, because your customer has the buying decision, or else selling will be very hard. I'll give you an example. I said I used to run a food business, and this was quite interesting for us. So we located our food businesses in Ore and Lokoja. The major sales were in Ore and Lokoja. Ore and Lokoja are transit towns. Now, think about product to market fit and listen to what I'm saying. Ore and Lokoja are transit towns, which means they are towns where people are traveling, right? People are traveling and they stop to eat, right? Now, I walked into the outlet one day, you know, and I was running the businesses from Lagos, right? Because I was not going to live in Ore. So I'll take a flight to Abuja, drive to Lokoja, or drive to Ore. And I did this for almost 4 years. And I walked into the outlet one day and I asked them, I said, what is our highest and our best use, right? And they said, oh, no, I'm going to hold that story. I'll tell you the first one. So we discovered at some point that the consumers were the travelers, right? And the customers were the bus drivers, right? God is good, all those guys. And it was from just looking at our business and saying, how do we increase sales? So when we discovered that the customers were the bus drivers, because wherever they park is where people will stop and eat, right? So if they were on your side and they parked, then people will stop and eat. If they parked in another outlet, that's where people will stop and eat. And you know, typically they wait for only like 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, they'll carry their stuff and go. Anybody that doesn't stop, that doesn't go back to the bus in 15 minutes is left behind. So we realized that that was a good strategy. So you know what we did? So we said to the bus drivers, this was years ago, we said to the bus drivers, we said, every time you stop, I'll give you free food. Every single time you stop, I'll give you free food. The guy said, you're serious? I said, yeah. And so in order to support that, you know what we did? We acquired the next parking, the next plot of land beside us, built a fence around the plot, right? And then registered all the drivers via biometrics, built a small place for them, right? And then they came in and they use biometrics to open, so it was biometrically open. So that's all. Now, we found out that what the customer wanted was a sense of home more than anything. That when the drivers were on the road, they didn't have a sense of home, right? So we gave them a place they could park and lock the gates, and give them a place they could open up and get free food. And it was even cheap food they wanted. We found out that this expensive food that we were selling to them, big chicken for 600, 650, they didn't care about it. They wanted swallow with, you know, all those things that were cheaper. Now, how did we find out all these things? We asked them, we just asked them. Now, so when I told the drivers that, the drivers started stopping by more often. And I knew that I just needed 300 buses to stop by to meet my target every day. Now, on 3 outlets, we made $1 billion in sales. Anytime I say that, people say, how did you do it? I said it was just strategy. It was understanding our markets, understanding our products. Now, after a while, I saw that this strategy worked, and I said to drivers, every month, if you can make 30 stops in a month, I'll give you a bag of rice to take home to madam. They went crazy. I mean, these guys went crazy. They will stop with empty bus, they will stop with full bus. Now, this strategy worked so well that at some point, the quality of our food declined. We didn't know because sales was not affected. Why? Because passengers will be complaining to the driver. Don't stop there, I don't like their food. The guy is deaf. So you don't like what? You will like it. Because are you the one going to buy lunch? You will like it. You have to like it by force. They'll be complaining, don't stop there. Now, what we had done is that we had understood our market, right? And we incorporated that market, and we knew that those that control the buying decision were not exactly the consumers, right? So in that fence, right? In that fenced up area, we now started to see that there was a bustling community, and there were people who thought our food was too expensive. So they would just stand there and wait for the bus. So we introduced something outside, and we called it Belefu. Now, Belefu was smaller, cheaper food, like 300 naira, you know, buka food, you know, they just buy, you know, and just eat. And, you know, and it was ours, it was like a sub-brand, right? It was a separate brand. And someone said one day that, I like this outside food, that these people inside, they think they are smart, that their food is too expensive. It's this one that outside that will be eating. I said, well, anyone you eat, it's our own, right? So, and again, understanding the market. Sometimes you are trying to sell a Rolls Royce to someone that wants a Camry. That's just what you're trying to do. You're saying, no, look at the bells, look at the whistles, it's so nice. And the customer said, I don't want. And you say, how can you not want? And you're getting frustrated. You say, I don't want. Right? Now, if you understand your customer, you can get products that fit that customer. And what's the easiest way to understand? Empathy. That's why I said it's the world's greatest business model. You must be able to put yourself in the customer's shoes. So this is what we found out, just by feedback, that the traveling customer has a budget of 1,000 naira. If you like, do juju, that money will not increase. If you like, do juju, it will never increase. Do you understand what I'm saying? So trying to sell him something that is 1, 2, 1, 3, it's not going to happen. So we designed a product that fits his budget and people will buy it. 1,000 is plus the water, everything together. That's what I'm spending on the road, right? Now, another question I'll ask you is, why do your customers keep coming back? You have to know. Why do your customers keep coming back? A strong value proposition brings the customer back every time. However, most businesses do not know why their customers keep coming back. You need to know why your customers keep coming back. What's the easiest way to know? Build a feedback mechanism that goes around your people so that you can know. Let me tell you why I said that. So I went to the outlet. This is a story I wanted to tell you earlier. I went to the outlet one day and I asked them, I said, guys, what's the reason why people keep coming back here? I mean, we used to have 70,000 people in a week pass through all our outlets. It was a massive crowd. So what is the reason why people keep coming back? And of course, I mean, as you would expect, the food, the kitchen staff said that it was because of the quality of our food. The sales staff said it was because our sales was awesome. The floor staff, the facility staff said, sir, can't you see how we clean the whole facility? Everybody had their opinion about why the customer comes from. So I said, okay, guys, let's do surveys and let's ask the customer. That's the only way we can be serious about this. So we did surveys and we started to ask the customer, why do you keep coming back? So the first question is, how is our food? And 90% of the customers' answer came back and said, we can't remember. Like, are you serious? You can't remember. So our food is not memorable. I learned since that's something you should never tell your wife, by the way. Anyway. So our food is not memorable. Okay. So if you can't remember how our food is, why do you keep coming back? 90% said because of your toilet. I said, because of what? They said your toilet. I said, then it occurred to us immediately that when people leave Lagos and get to Ore, the first thing on their mind is not food. And when people leave Abuja and get to Lokoja, the first thing on their mind is not food. Child, I remember then we were doing sales about 200-300 million per annum. What did we do? We broke down all the toilets. We broke down all the toilets. And we broke down the chambers, even the chambers in the ground. We built bigger chambers, rebuilt the toilets with marble tiles, put air conditioners inside, put lobby boys to be, helping you, and put a place to change your babies, like bidets and something for the babies. Look, our sales doubled, I kid you not. Our sales moved from about 250 to about 600, more than doubled, because we understood our highest and the best use to the customer. Once we broke down that toilet, we now became the place to pass by on the road. I'm sure many of you have paid us money, Why? Because when people came and saw that they could use that kind of toilet, you are pressed. 3 hours on the road, you are pressed. Even if you have a big bladder, you are pressed. And so we found at some point that the queues to the toilet were starting to be very long after we realized this. Because you enter the toilet and the first thing that hits you is the air conditioning, and you're like, what? In Ore? Are you serious? What? And you're like, man, these guys are. And then you see, you can change your baby. And you're like, what? And on the strip, food selling outlets were shutting down. We were expanding, looking for who would buy over. Yes, I'm sure you have paid us money in Lokoja Academy, I'm sure. And so I now said to them, I said, guys, as people are coming from the toilet, why don't you install a blower in the kitchen that blows the smell of the food to the toilet door? So that, it's like, as I just come out of the toilet, oh, that smells nice. And look, you can laugh at me, but it worked, And so because we knew also that people had 15 minutes, so we now started selling something we call grab and go. It was a smaller pack, right? And it was like 600 naira. You know, we knew they had a budget of 1K and they had 15 minutes. You have spent 10 of those 15 minutes in the toilet. You are not going to come and queue at the point again, right? Someone said, why don't you charge them for using their toilet? I said, no. It's value proposition. It's empathy. Now, funny enough, Nigerians are nice. Once they feel that they have used your toilet, they want to buy something. I'm telling you, the majority of people are like, they want to buy something. So the guys finish using the toilet and they're like, okay. And the minute he smells it, you just put the grab and go beside him. He just picks it up, hands you his money, and is out. And our sales went high. We pushed this thing until we did $1 billion in sales from 3 outlets of food, not even with one in Lagos. Think about it. It means that there's nothing you cannot do in business. There's nothing you cannot do in business. You just have to determine that this is how it will be. One, the operating environment. What is in it that's beyond my control? The customer is the customer. You cannot determine how the customer behaves. The best thing you can do is put yourself in the customer's shoes, empathy. That's why I said empathy is the world's biggest business model, right? Okay, I think my time is moving fast so that Shay doesn't chase me. I want to show you love, right? So I'll show you this quickly. If you look at some of the greatest companies in the world, you see their vision statement, and you don't see the word money in it. You just see love. So Google says to ensure that all the information in the world is easy to find, right? To ensure that all the information in the world is easy to find. You don't see the word profit in it. Facebook says to have a more connected world. Toyota says to ensure safe and responsible means of travel. Walmart says to give poor people access to what rich people buy. Empathy is the world's biggest model. The ability to put yourself in your customer's shoes gives you, I'll share this slide. It gives you the capacity to innovate and create solutions for them on a scale that you will never believe, right? Shayi, I don't know how much time I have left. I know I've used a lot of the time. Please let me know, because I know we didn't start exactly on time. All right? So yes, I love Walmart too. Yes, and then finally, communicating with your customers. Right? I like to use this photo or this image because sometimes we think we know what our customers will, but we don't, right? So you see the first image says how the customer explained it, how the team designed it. What the customer really wanted was in Nigeria what we call Jangolova. That's what the customer wanted, right? But what we designed, the customer did not even get the value from it, right? So how do I do it? I communicate with my customer. Once I'm able to, okay, I'll do customer groups and I'll do business systems, right? Once I'm able to communicate with my customer, I can understand what my customer wants. In communicating with my customer, I must be able to put myself in my customer's shoes. If I cannot put myself in my customer's shoes, then I can't create for him. I can't understand that aspect of the market, and I cannot get products that must fit into them. You interpret what the customer makes, and your capacity to interpret what the customer wants determines your value proposition and whether it will last. Now, again, what I've designed here is a tool. We call it customer grouping, of understanding your customer better. And I just wanted to use this. I used it in my book. I just wanted to use this, so that you can understand it better. So I have 3 customer groups. Customer groupings are a way of breaking large target markets into smaller groups, so that you can understand them demographically, psychographically, and in any other way, and the things they want. So you can see my first group is, so let's say I have a potential customer base of 100,000, right? I can have as much as 100 customer groups. I can have 30, 50. Once you sit down and do the work, you can understand them. So this one, I say female, she's female, 21 to 25, employed, but she's a junior in her office. She vacations once a year because she doesn't have any other responsibilities, no dependents. She's, well, that's not the case these days, but she's her career is a priority. Now, if I look at this woman, what do I sell to her? The second customer is male, 31 to 35, employed mid-level, vacations once a year, married with 2 kids, family is priority. What do I sell to him? The third customer is male, 40 to 45, self-employed, vacations twice a year, divorced, legacy is his priority. You see how we have brought in different kinds of people here. I know that this is hard work, but if you are not ready to do this, put yourself in the customer's shoes. You can't design products that fit the market. You will just keep hitting a brick wall, like designing a tree like this. Who wants this? No, really, in life, who wants this? Nobody wants it. Nobody had this at the back of their house growing up. It probably costs you a lot more money to design this than it costs you to design this. But the customer is saying, this is what I want. Eco motto is what we call it. See, let me just say that you're exposing your age by smiling. So nobody wants it. But if you don't know the customer, you are not likely to want this. Who wants this? It looks good, but nobody wants it. Nobody wants it because it's useless or dangerous at the very least. Right? So it's very important that you know your customer, use your customer groups, find out what the customer wants, and you can break the customer down into these smaller groups, into their smaller ones. And of course, these days you have to add things like, a lot of women are entrepreneurs these days, right? She's young, but she has dependents. So there are variables to these things. She's young, but she's taking care of the entire family, So how do I help her so that her cash flow can take care of the whole family and still build her business? You need to start thinking about all that, right? Now, I've decided to teach systems intelligence. It's not on topic, but it's something that if you don't understand, you are likely to not be able to grow your business anymore. And I've committed to teach system intelligence everywhere I go, right? Now, there are 2 concepts of the earth and the world. The first one is the earth, which is the container of all the resources in nature. And in economics, we largely refer to it as land, right? It's the container of all resources, right? In economics, we largely refer to it as land. Now, the world is the system that governs the distribution of the earth, right? So you have a skill or a talent or a product. All those are in your earth. Skill, product, talent that you bring to the table, that you sell, all those are in your earth. They are resources, right? Now, the world is the system of distribution, right? Value creation, relationships that you use to ensure that your earth gets to the end user and remains in circulation, right? Now, let me explain it to you this way. If you look at any industry, who makes more money? The talent or the owner of the platforms? So let's look at music industry. In the music industry, for instance, who do you think makes more money? Wizkid, Wizkid as a talent, or Don Jazzy as the owner of the record label? Clearly, the record label makes more money. No matter how much the talent makes. The record label makes money because they own the distribution system, right? And people who own the system will rule over the talent any day, which means nations that sell only earth or resources will end up working for nations that sell systems. Give you an example. Nigeria sells crude oil. In fact, it's ashamed to say. And Israel is a landlocked country, no natural resources. But Israel is the drip irrigation capital of the world. Israel is the anti-terrorism capital of the world, and Israel is the innovation capital of the world. Fortune 500 companies, about 70% of them have their research capital either in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem. Nigeria is not the capital of the world in anything. Why is that? Because systems rule over talent. Listen to me, systems rule over talent. Now, if you are going to succeed in life and in business, you must build your systems. You must build systems around your life in these three areas. And I want to close at this point, but I want to say this clearly. That if you are going to succeed in life and in business, you must build systems around your life in these three areas, right? The first one is time. Time is the end game in life. Everything we do on the basis of time, right? And you must build systems around your life, around your time. You cannot treat time like it's not important. In fact, another law to creating wealth is that the more things you can squeeze into your 24 hours, the more money you're allowed to make, right? So the big thing about time, the secret about wealth is ambidexterity. Ambidexterity is the capacity to do many things at the same time. In fact, anthropologically, right? If you study, I study a bit of anthropology, and if you look at Homo sapiens, they say that one of the reasons why he survived and why he's more evolved than other animals, right, is that his hands are free, while the other animals use their hands to crawl, and they needed their hands to move around. His hands were free, and he could use his hands to do more. In fact, I don't want to go too deep into anthropology, but the easier it is for you to do things, the better it is. So build a system around your time. Building a system around your time involves also building your capacity to do things faster. So what tools that you need? A friend of mine called me last night and said, man, I need your help. I've been battling with this thing for hours. I need to do something on Excel. Can I send you a link and share my screen? And I did it in 15 minutes flat. And he said, God, so I've been battling with this man. I said, that's why I am a high earner. I don't battle with anything. If I can't get it right, I pass it on. But it's not worth my time that I start battling with it. I pass it on. I outsource, right? Which means that what you don't learn how to do, you must pay someone else for. Now, the second thing you must build yourself around your life is your relationships. People are more important than things. Hear me, this is deep stuff I'm talking. I'm moving away from the business now. People are more important than things, right? And the end game in life is relationships. The more people you can get to pay you, right, the bigger you can be in life. And as you get to a certain point in life, it is relationship that will draw people to the table. If I didn't like Sheyi, I wouldn't be here. That's just the truth. And we go back 20 years or so, even more, right? Now, you are not a garbage dump, which means that you also protect your heart from certain toxic relationships. I say this particularly because I'm speaking with women. You must learn to protect your heart from certain kinds of relationships so that you can perform optimally at every point in time, right? So leave your door open to be a blessing to people. Ensure that people leave you better than they met you, but also protect yourself so that certain relationships don't bring you down. You must, that's a system I build, that's my own system around my relationships, right? I will let you run ragged and riot around me, but there are barriers around my heart that I put my foot down. The third thing you need to build a system around is your money. This one is tough, but it's the reality. See, if you build a system around these three things, let me tell you this, you will grow capital in a short while. And you'll be able to start any business you want to. These three things form capital. So you must learn to build a system around the money. I'll tell you a story and I'll close. I'll complete a story I started telling you and I'll close. So that trip that my wife and I took when she went into the Louis Vuitton shop in Los Angeles, I had just brought her from Mexico because we went to Cancun. And so I've tried. Women, we agree that I had tried. I had budget for the trip. I call that budget lao money. You know what lao is? Lao is flexing. It's flexing. Okay, let me say flexing money. Once flexing money finishes, it's finished. You will do juju. Juju, even juju will not bring 1 naira out. Once the flexing money has finished. And I find that a lot of people dip into their savings anyhow just to impress people. Let me tell you, I don't have any desire to impress you. Yala yolo money, I see people. I have no, every bone that desires to impress people inside me is dead. You need it as an entrepreneur because nobody knows what's in their own business. Eyes will clear after Lala money finish. So my own eyes clears fast. So by the time we go to LA, Lala money has finished. And so I said, and we still have 7 days left in the vacation. Okay, Jesus. So I said, we will, thank God we have paid for hotel from Nigeria, if not, and we are paid for return tickets. Well, okay, we'll wake up in the hotel, look at each other. Breakfast is on the house, we eat breakfast, we'll be all right. So one of my friends came and said, bros, I can't do this. I'm going to pay for you to do a tour of all those places in LA. So I said, okay, no problem. Other people's money is sweet to spend. So we went for the tour. At some point, we got to a place where the tour bus was passing, a place on LA Rodeo Drive. And as we got there, my wife saw Louis Vuitton. And before the bus stopped, she came down. Like someone that is, like Molo. Hey, I said, Jesus. And she entered the store. So I came down from the bus. And I stood outside the store. I was just looking. So I'm pretty big as a black man, So some white people were already looking at me. I said, let me go inside this store. So I went inside. So the guy said to her, immediately saw me just turned away from her. French guy started selling to me. I said, Oga, I'm not the one buying something, talk to. We are all speaking for them, like, okay, we are still speaking for them now. Okay. I mean, that for them is with an American accent, So this guy, so my wife looks at this bag and says, and I asked him, I said, okay, how much is the bag, sir? He said $4,000. My wife looks at the bag and says, she doesn't even like it. Now, of course, as a married man, I knew that doesn't mean I'm off the hook. It just means that something worse is coming. So I said, she doesn't even like it. So the man said, okay, let him take her to one place. So he took her to one corner. In this corner, there was this bag that was in sort of like a pedestal, and there was light shining on the bag, like The only thing left was to just bow down. It was like they put it. So I was there talking with the guy, and he said, she said, hey, that's the one I like. I said, hey. So I asked the guy, I said, how much? He said, $9,000. Then he said something which I'm sure he just said, I don't believe it was true. He said, and you know, a few weeks ago, Jay-Z was here and he bought one of these bags for Beyonce. And it was at that point that my phone and my Akmeya accent disappeared. In fact, I did not know when I switched to Ijebu, because what I said next, I shocked myself. I said it, and I knew that I thought about it in Yoruba first before I said it in English. So normally I would have said something like, you know, because like I said, I'm not influenced. If Jay-Z like he should walk in while we're there, I will look at him and say, hey, Jiga Alpha, finish. It doesn't mean I'll buy $9,000 bag. So normally I would have said something like so, but I did not know when I said when then. I walked out of the shop immediately. And then as I was getting to the door of the shop, they had this Latino doorman who looked at me and gave me a high five. And he was like, my man. And I knew that this guy has been using trick for people since. He has been catching people. The guy was like, you're the first person that this guy did not catch like that. I just walked out of the shop. My wife followed me. She said, hey, I'm not saying you should buy it now, maybe in the future, when you have some Boko money. I said, thank you, Derek. Listen, if you are going to build capital, even if you have relationships and time, at some point, to show seriousness, you might have to put money on the table, right? Which means you need savings. In order to build savings, the laws are simple, we all know them. One, don't live above your means. Two, save a percentage of your earnings. They call it paying yourself. It's in the laws of gold. Three, when la money finish, it has finished. Juju cannot collect it. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this class. I will take a few questions. Sheyi, thank you. I've thoroughly enjoyed myself. Thank you for inviting me. God bless you all. Sheyi, do you want me to take the questions that are here? Your mic is muted, Sheyi. Sheyi, you need to unmute your mic.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Apologies, I had a network glitch. Let me start by saying, Fisayo, thank you so much. You know, like someone mentioned in the chat that this should have been 2 master classes, not just one. And you know, I'm not disappointed because I knew, you know, like I said when I was introducing him, that Fisayo has a rare and a unique insight to business and strategy and life, and you see it, you know, manifest in the content that he has produced for us and the session that he's given us, as well as the final tips. You know, I like the tips on how to build system around your time, your relationship, and your money. I don't think anyone could give you a more valuable advice, you know, to succeed in your business and also in your personal life. So a number of questions came in early before the session, but your session apparently just answered most of the questions. So I'm just going to ask one or two questions that, that may not be out really within the context of, the topic, because really all the questions within the context of the topic has been answered. So someone's asking, Emily Monami is asking that, what's the best way to test the product at least cost? So it's a lean approach to validating your products. And she's also asking that, I think she's in the tech space, that what advice would you give for someone starting off in the tech sector?
Fantastic. The best way to test your product is to talk to your customers, right? So depending on how you interact with your customers normally, you must find a way to talk to them. You can have a focus group session, right? So when Volvo designing this SUV that has become the highest selling SUVs of all time, they identified that the customers were women, right? And they put women in a focus group session and they asked them simple questions, very simple questions. What is your greatest problem with driving your car? And you know what the women said? They said the greatest problem is driving with your heels. And Volvo included this long space where you could put in your high heels and drive. First car that ever had it. Biggest selling, like highest selling car for Volvo of all time. You need to communicate, talk to your customer, right? Talk to your customer. Test the product by talking to your customer. Don't just push something in the market. Now, that's one way. Recently, you can co-create, which means don't finish the product before you start engaging the customer. That's also very important. You don't have to finish the product before you start engaging customers. You can ask people who will buy this if you can have whole focus group sessions throughout the course of product development, so that you know. I remember when I used to design loans for healthcare businesses, you ask hospitals, you ask doctors, what is your biggest challenge? And we used to think, oh, technology, all this. They didn't care. It was generator. Generator. So, okay, what if we can finance solar for you? Fantastic. So, people have simple needs, but we romanticize it and we make it sound, we tend to want it to be bigger than it is as human beings. But if you simplify it, you will find that every time that more often than not, you have the right. And someone says, how can you get this feedback? I always say put in a feedback system, that a feedback loop that goes that goes around your people, so that your people don't alter. In the process of trying not to look bad, they might alter the feedback, right? So, for instance, direct line to someone responsible, direct, especially with technology, direct email to someone who will take action. Customer. The days of having a what they call that box that you put inside the office, a comment box that they will put something inside. Those days are over.
Suggestion box.
Suggestion box. Your people will open the box, remove the bad comments, leave the good comments, and by the time you open it at the end of the month, all you will see is inside the box is Sheyi is a good girl, E-I-E-I-O. That's all you will see. Because Sheyi would have removed everything, and she would have put only the ones that say Sheyi is a good girl. So you want direct links, SurveyMonkey. There are so many tools technologically that you can use to get, and those are the kind of tools we use to say, why do you keep coming? And if you ask your customers the right questions, also ask the right questions. Don't ask questions that will lead to what you want to hear. Because some of us, we have that, we don't want to hear, we really don't want to hear. Don't ask questions that will lead to, and then remember, strategy loves feedback. Strategy loves feedback. Strategy loves brutal honesty, right? So allow people to be brutally honest so that they can help you get to where you need to go.
Okay, and so next question. For those watching on YouTube, please send in your questions. I'm going to pick up questions from there. I'll pick a few questions from YouTube also. So Liz is asking, what has been your biggest fall in business, and how did you recover?
I think the kind of business I did in giving loans, my biggest fall is always when the customer cannot repay, which means that we either made a wrong judgment call, right, and we made a mistake, or even if whether it's due to willingness or ability, we made a mistake. We gave the wrong, we lost money. We came to the table, we collected more people's money, and we lost our money. And it's usually very emotional for me. And the only way to recover is to suck it up and do the next one better, right? So I don't let it get to me. I do the next one better. So I take the learnings and then I do the next one better, right? Someone says, how do you succeed in consulting? Consulting is hard to do. So I spent a lot of time learning, because when you come out, it's your intellectual firepower and your relationships that will matter. So I spent a lot of time learning. I spent years just learning consulting, learning. You must also know how to commoditize in consulting. I find that a lot of consultants don't know how to build or commoditize. When I say productize or commoditize, put your value proposition in small products that people can pay per time. So you're waiting for this big, and in the end, most projects don't close in consulting because the customer has gotten what they want, or the customer somehow doesn't close. So you must find a way to commoditize and collect your money in tranches and collect it. And then you must also look for customers that are willing to pay retainerships. They still exist. If you are bringing the right value, let me explain something to you. As a law of creation and as a law of life, sound creates light and light determines time. This is physics, superior to physics. Light determines time, which means that if you bring the light at the right intensity to the table, light can collapse time, which means that your solution, if your wisdom is strong enough, if your value proposition is strong enough, you can do things faster than everybody else, right? So I tell customers, for instance, that I want a retainer model that will keep the business going, pay the bills, so I'm not under pressure. So I'll provide solutions that are canned for retail solutions that I'll tell the customer, okay, just pay me like you're paying one extra staff, and then by the time there are 4 or 5 people paying you that, yeah, all right, you can pay the bills, and then you can now build solutions that can help you in the future.
Fantastic. Thanks, Fisayo. So, ladies, if you want me to ask your questions, please be clear about the questions you're asking, because some of the questions I'm seeing here is not so clear, so I'm not going to ask them. But someone is asking, how can you create awareness or reach customers and consumers for services such as health services, where you cannot particularly advertise? I think this person is asking because of your expertise in that sector.
Exactly. Healthcare is my hobby. And let me be very clear. Innovation is what makes you able to survive in those sectors. Yes, they say you cannot advertise, but you can find ways around it, right? So let me. When that book came out, I put it in some bookshops, and the bookshops said they didn't want it. That who are you and how do you know your book to sell? Very valid. Now, I had 2 options: get angry and say, "Don't worry, in the future I will make it," and you come back. But all that is crap. It's emotional, right? So you know what I did? I worked with my publisher, who is a fantastic young lady, and she said, "Look, let's do it this way. Beautiful strategy. I'm going to engage like 50 people, right, to be calling these bookshops and requesting for the books." And that's what she did, right? So big bookshops, they started calling bookshops. Like in a day, 5 will call, the next day, another 5 will call, another 5 will call. So the bookshops now called me back and said, now these people, we engaged them to request for the book. It was a strategy, right? So they were requesting for the book. So the bookshops eventually called and said, please, can you bring your book? And for some reason, people are requesting for the books, right? It's the same thing we've done for a customer in healthcare, where You know, you see your market and you find out that most Nigerians spend a large percentage of their time in traffic, right? So radio is a big way to sell whatever it is you are doing, right? So we target the biggest radio shows, right? And we target our people and they start calling the radio station and they say, oh, have you been to this hospital? Oh, wow, man. They are not advertising, they're just telling us how wonderful their experience in that hospital was, you know? So eventually, you have a patient-led advertising model where you can't say we're the best hospital, you can't say we're advertising, they're just here to say, man, the service we got in that hospital was fantastic. And by the time 10 people are saying it, people are hearing it. So those are some ways that we've done it. You can find other innovative ways roundabout, you know, of selling your product or advertising, bring your product to the knowledge of the customer.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Fisher. So this is going to be my final question because we're way out of our time. It's almost 3 p.m. It's almost 4. So it's going. So Precision Edge is asking. So can you say building a system and developing an SOP for a business means the same thing? So SOP means standard operating procedures.
Standard operating procedures. Yes, but building a system starts from the high level. So just before I came here, I was with a client who were building a HR system for, right? And I said to the client, you have this SOP is a process document, right? Right? That documents how you do things. It is very granular, but it's a process document. Now, building a system takes it from a helicopter view down to the SOP and even beyond. So I said to the client, give me your vision and mission. The client gave me vision and mission. I loved it. Very wonderful. So the next thing I said, where are your corporate goals? Oh, we don't have. Oh, okay. Okay, where's your HR strategy? Oh, we don't have. Of course, I knew when you don't have corporate goals, how can you have HR strategy? So there's a gap. So the system has a gap already. You know, so building a system takes it higher than just the mere SOP. You know, it goes into culture, determining culture. And people always say, oh, we don't have culture. You have culture, you're just not in control of it. If you didn't deliberately determine your culture, you're not in control of it. So that customer now, we have to take them through your corporate goals, your HR strategy, down to cascade to a point where you have HR processes and or SAP and all that. So even though they mean the same thing in terms of doing, they are not the same thing. You know, building a system is much more than just an SOP.
Thank you so much, Fisayo. It's been a mind-blowing session. Ladies, I'm sure, from the comments, you can see that this session has really been impactful and insightful. Thank you so much, Fisayo. It's indeed been an honor, you know, having you on this program. So ladies, that's it. Your assignment will be sent out by email tomorrow. Don't forget to ensure that you fill the attendance form. It's going to close in 15 minutes after the session. So please make sure that you fill it. And look out for your assignments tomorrow. It will be put up on the Google Classroom and also sent to you by email. Thank you so much, ladies, and do enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much, Fisayo.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Thank you for having me. God bless you.